Year 5, Lesson 9, Extensive Exercise 2. How many numbers from 1 to 1,200 are neither square nor cubic? So to answer this question, first we need to try and find out how many of those numbers are square or cubic. So let's start with the squares. I want to estimate how many squares are less than 1,200. So to do this, I'm going to look for the biggest square number that is less than 1,200. I know that this number is going to be somewhere in between 30 squared, which is 900, and 40 squared, which is 1,600. So I've estimated the tens to see that it's somewhere between 30 and 40 square numbers. I can also see that this 1,200 is very close, a little bit before the middle of these two markers, the 30 and 40 squared. So I'm going to estimate and see if there's 35 square numbers, which gives me 1,225, which is too big. So let's check 34 squared and see if we can have 34 square numbers less than 1,200. And this gives me 1,156. So that tells us that there are 34 square numbers in the interval that we want. It's a little bit easier to estimate the cube numbers because we know that 10 cubed is equal to 1,000. So we just need to check if 11 cubed is less than 1,200, which is equal to 1,331. So our answer is 10 cube numbers less than 1,200. Now we must also consider any of those numbers which have been counted in both the square numbers and the cube numbers, because some numbers, for example, 1, are equal to 1 cubed, which is also a square number, because it's also equal to 1 squared. Now, to estimate the number of cubes which are also squares, I'm going to go through the list of cube numbers, because we know that any number that has an even power is also a square number. Now, of course, 1 cubed is a little bit of an exception, because it has no effect when you multiply by 1. We could multiply by 1 any number of times to any power, and it will always be equal to 1, the square number, and a cubed number. So we'll ignore 1 for the moment, and we'll move on to 2 cubed. Now, 2 cubed has an odd number of powers, so that cannot be a square number. 3 cubed, again, has an odd number of powers, but 4 cubed seems like it has an odd number of powers, but I can break that 4 into 2 squared. Now, 2 squared to the power of 3, I'm using some brackets here to make sure that we're putting this whole 2 squared to the power of 3. Now, if you're familiar with your power laws, then we can multiply these powers together to get 2 to the power of 6. However, we can also express this as 2 times 2, so that's inside the brackets. And I'm going to use brackets again to show that I'm multiplying it by itself 3 times. Now, as you can see now, that this is equal to 2 multiplied by itself 6 times, which is 2 to the power of 6. Now, that is an even power. So 4 to the power of 3 is also a square number. And we can actually see that that's going to be equal to 64, okay, which is 8 squared. Next, we can have a look at 5 cubed, which has an odd power. 6 cubed has an odd power. 7 cubed, odd power. Now, 8 cubed is another one we can express as 2 to the power of 3 to the power of 3, which I'm now just going to use my power laws to see is equal to 2 to the power of 9. And that cannot be a square number because it has an odd power. And we've got a couple more to check. We've got 9 cubed. Now, 9 cubed I can express as 3 squared to the power of 3, which if we multiply those powers, we get 3 to the power of 6, which again is a square number. And lastly, we've got 10 cubed, which has an odd number of powers, so can't be square too. So in total, how many have we got? We had 1 cubed, we had 4 cubed, and we had 9 cubed, which are all square numbers. So that leaves me with 3 in total. So going up to make my calculation, we need to add together the 34 square numbers. Remember, this includes those squares which are also cubes. We're going to add together the 10 cubic numbers, which again is counting those 3 cube squares again. So I need to subtract those 3 to make sure that we don't count them twice. And that's going to give me a total of 44 minus 3, which is 41 numbers, which are square, cubic, or both. However, this question asked how many are neither. So I need to take my total of 1,200 and subtract the 41 that we don't want to leave me with 1,159 square or cubic numbers. Or sorry, numbers which are neither square nor cubic.